This week we watched Challengers, directed by Luca Guadagnino.
This movie was not what I was expecting because remember it's my first like Luca experience. So I came here like unlike you, I'm not a seasoned Luca
It's
person.
not.
So I was
Oh,
really I was
wow.
I was like this is like
I'm fascinated.
really like hypersexual, like really oddly. I love like I know you're a big Trent Reznor fan and Atticus Ross fan as well as far as their scores and stuff. I really thought their song choice really helped those intense scenes where there was either where the characters were in kind of sexual interaction with each other or scenes of intense pressure. It puts you in that almost not zen state, but really a tense trance like state, which I loved. I thought the editing was amazing. I remember people complaining about the editing, saying there were too many cuts. But then I realized as
Mm.
they were pacing, the dialogue exchanges, it was working like actual tennis match. Like the cuts are going volley, 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 volley. And so I'm glad he added that element of tennis into the editing style of the film, which engaged me even more. I think this is probably one of Zendaya's like probably a little bit of her best performances as an actress. This is probably the most I've seen her probably other than Euphoria, probably give a wide range of emotions. I do love the interplay between Josh O'Connor and Mike Fass. They're like back and forth. It wasn't what I expected, but it was still better than what I expected.
I wasn't like dying to see this film just because when I watched the trailer, I couldn't really comprehend like what exactly it was about. And really it's just about people being messy, like and also tennis. Like that's kind of the vibe. And I gotta say, I love it when it's messy. I do. Well, I watched the trailer and I was like, oh, well, this does not look like a Luca film at all. But you really have to watch the movie to actually see kind of his fingerprints on it because it is something completely different than he's ever done before. I mean, like this is such a different type of film. The edits, there were a couple of those that are signature Luca stuff. His kind of focus on bodies. I wouldn't say sexuality, but sensuality. He's very good at capturing like intimate moments and stuff. That's all like signature Luca. The score, thought it was great. The only issue I had with the score was that sometimes it was kind of drowning out the dialogue because it was so loud that you couldn't hear what people were saying. So that's actually, but that's not the score. That's whoever does the
Mixing.
sound design, I think.
Yeah.
Mixing, yeah. I was interested that the marketing of this film is very focused on Zendaya.
Yeah.
The movie is focused on Josh O'Connor and Mike Face. Like this is their film kind of. This is really these two guys is like friendship, brotherhood, and how that all kind of gets mixed in with the competitiveness of their athletic nature and stuff. I have had very complicated feelings of describing how I view Zendaya's acting. I've struggled to put my finger on what exactly it is for maybe the entirety of this podcast. I don't know, however long we've been talking about her. I watched this movie and I figured out what it was. I was like, okay, I think she kind of gives the same performance in everything that she does. I didn't see The Greatest Showman, so I don't know about that. I can't speak to that film and what she did in that. Look at both seasons of Euphoria, look at Malcolm Marie, look at Dune, look at Spider-Man, and then look at this. She does exactly what she needs to do.
Yeah.
However, it's in that same kind of modern day Leo thing where you just know what you're gonna get. And maybe because I just saw Dune, it's like I know that performance is still in my
Yeah.
brain. So I'm seeing the same kind of consistencies with this performance.
I do agree with everything you said in regards to Dundee. I do think this is probably one of her better performances. I also think she does like act a bit the same, but I think this movie and her character is written for those strengths that she has. So that's why I think
Mm.
it helped elevate her.
Josh O'Connor is one of our best actors. And I know he doesn't get like the hype that Timothy Chalamet does or Paul Mescal. I guess he hasn't been nominated for an Oscar yet, so I guess that's why he hasn't gotten the hype yet. But he's one of our best actors. He is so good. He is so good in this. Mike, oh my God, great. Their chemistry that they had in that movie carried that movie. Like it makes this movie good. Yeah, I had so many questions about her character. I guess her thing is that she loves tennis. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know. I feel like the other guys were a little bit more fleshed out.
Yeah.
And the writers, she was a producer on the film, so like they should have fleshed her character out too.
My understanding of it, and I was having this conversation with like this is me and racing. We were talking to one of my friends about a lot of like race car drivers now don't have a lot of personality like they did when we were growing up and watching them. And I said that's due to how much sponsorship and marketing for sponsors has come into play. They kind of want a blank slate where they can build in mold. So that's why you have a lot of interviews for a lot of these younger athletes. Sometimes they really don't know how to express a personality because they've been groomed to like, oh, this sponsor wants this person. I can pretend to be that, or that they don't really know how to be themselves. And I feel like that's kind of how Dot she is. She knows how to give the very canned response. Like she's already being prompt as Anita's next star of tennis. You know, when they talk about going to school, she goes, "Oh, I'd rather go to college so I can have other skills behind tennis." But then she goes to college, and then once she gets injured, she says F it and still falls back on coaching tennis. So you really didn't want to believe what you were saying. You were giving a basically canned dialogue. Art, Mike's character, was like, yeah, no, I'm going to go to Stanford, actually play and get an education. And then you have Patrick, knowing he came for money, was like, I'm just going to go pro and dick around with these tournaments and whatever. So, and that's the thing. At least the boys had a set personality and knew a direction they wanted to go in, and she was still trying to figure out who she was.
Towards the beginning, I feel like it does make more sense for her to be like a more of a be cautious about like how she is perceived because she is a public figure at that point. You have an image you're trying to protect, but you also have this other side of yourself that you want to explore. So I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. When she gets older, though, and that's the thing, because it keeps flipping back and forth through time, right? So as she gets older now, and she has a child, and she's not playing tennis anymore, I was kind of lost of like what is motivating her to do certain things. Like she couldn't fulfill her dreams, so she's just gonna live vicariously through her husband, who she doesn't like, not really be a present mom, and just mess around because why not?
Yeah.
Which, listen, I support women's rights. I also support the women's wrongs. So
everybody.
I was just trying to understand. I'm not judging her.
We vote advocate for equal opportunity mess on both sides.
Oh yeah.
Her interaction with those two young men at the hotel room and now into adulthood where it suddenly rekindles, it gives her the chance to be in control. You know, I can no longer actively play tennis as a professional. All right, cool. I live vicariously through my husband. I'm his coach. Blah blah blah. I want to be great, so I'm gonna push him to be great. I think he basically he called her. She was like, "Oh, you like me because I'm an asshole just like you." Deep down, you don't want to show that side, but you know how to manipulate people just like me.
It was good mess, like,
Yeah.
and because again, Luca was directing it. It was hot. I was like, oh, so spicy. Some of these scenes, I was like, okay, I like it.
Penises look weird, Cindy. As a man, penises look weird.
You watched the show We Are Who We Are, which was also directed by Luca. It's on HBO. There's a scene where a character goes into like a men's shower and everyone's naked and P&I for days, right?
Yeah.
It was that scene in the movie was almost like a cut paste of what was in the show. And I was like, why would you do that twice when people would have seen that scene already and it's something else that you did? Like that's not, to me, that was more of like people have an expectation of how I make movies. And so I have to. You must see penis. Like you have to know that I am directing it and this is one of my signatures. Yeah. Like Martin Scorsese has this thing, Steven Spielberg has this thing. This is my thing. Yeah. Just penises. And I found it very weird because it does kind of take you out of it a little bit because you're like, why is this here? Why? Well, at least it took me out of it. I was like, why is this here? And so I didn't think that was necessary. Didn't think that he needed to do that. Didn't find it interesting or good storytelling, to be honest. But that was his personal decision. So okay. The number of wild out-of-pocket things Patrick does in this movie, the getting a date just to have somewhere to sleep, that is real.
My man's and homeless. That's it's real. Dudes do it in real life.
I know, that's why it was scary. I was like, oh my god, no. It's ridiculous for all the reasons that she stated of like, your family has money, like why are you cosplaying poor? That irritated me. I was like, what are you doing? Also, the ending. Let's talk about it.
Ending was horrible. It was horrible because after the sauna scene, I was like, oh, they're going to call back to where he told them they had sex. And I was just there waiting for it to go, yep, they already did. And then they called back again to where she was talking about, oh, for 15 seconds of the match, me and the girl were having a dialogue, and the guy goes, yeah, you were so into it, let us scream. and then that movie just cuts to black. Like, the
Hated
fuck?
it.
Because now I'm
Hated
like,
it.
do they get divorced? Does she become, Patrick's, manager, and does he go on to win a U.S. Open and extend her legacy? And does she continue to live vicariously to him? Like, what's up? Like, the note it ended on was like, for all the tension they had in that movie, and where they had to come to a commonality at the end of, oh, she's been playing us almost our whole adult lives. You know, they end in a hug, like, oh, we're teenagers again, and she's like, yeah, good job, guys, and cut to black. I was like, Luca, is this a thing you do all the time?
Luca has a habit, so I guess this is part of his film language, of leaving ambiguous endings. He does that all the time. He did it in Call Me by Your Name. He did it in We Are Who We Are. He likes to not wrap things up for his audience. Like, he'll leave you with like an image, and that's kind of it. And he is known for doing that. I think that in this case, it really doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of almost getting to a moment where you are going to get answers. Like there's so many things that they already set up, even within that like last third. Like, there's a lot of stuff that they set up where you're just like, okay, so where is this going to go? So to leave it off doesn't. It's not an ambiguous ending. It's just like not. It's just not telling the story correctly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You've set up the question of what are Tashi and Art going to do, because he said, this is kind of it for me. Like, I'm done after this one. And she obviously doesn't like that. So we know that. So what happens after this match? Tashi cheated on Art with Patrick, his nemesis, like, and they both know that was the callback to placing the ball in the middle of the racket. Like, so they both know what happened. They're gonna hug. Why?
Yeah.
Why? What in Art's character would make him okay with something like that?
Yeah.
And the stakes are much higher now because they're married and they have a kid.
Yeah.
It's not like you were teenagers and like, oh, okay, you took my girl. Damn, like, I wish you didn't do that. It's not that.
Yeah.
We're adults now, so there are actual consequences. It seemed like such a weird thing to end it on that way. And I don't know, is that how guys work? Where like, even if someone screws you over, you're kind of fine with it? Like, I don't know if that's just. No, that's not how. Okay.
No.
That didn't make any sense. Her response to that moment doesn't make any sense, because it's like, to me, it seems like Tashi doesn't care about either of these guys. That's the vibe I was picking up.
Yeah.
Like, they are all means to an end. They're all tools. She's manipulating both of them. So to me, it isn't that she cares about either of them, really, to even be invested in their own friendship or their reconnection. So why would she let out that scream? That doesn't make any sense. I didn't appreciate that, because I was actually having a good time watching the film. So I just felt like that ending was a major letdown, and also just didn't make sense to any of the characters, really.
She spends like 4 or 5 times in the movie. It's like, oh, I don't want to be a homewrecker. And then once the boys are no longer friends, she goes, oh, I actually turned out to be a homewrecker. Then she continues the behavior and then wrecks her own home. Like,
yeah.
Like,
okay, that's a self-own.
Like, are you dumb? Like, I love how he used, of course, everybody knows the 3-act structure, but he aligned the 3-act structure within a tennis match, where each ending, for each set, that character gets a victory. So there's a sense of rising action that whole third act, that whole third set, the whole time. And the way it ends, it just like, and I'm using a term because this would probably fit Luca. It's kind of like edging. Like, you got me to that point, and I'm about the climax, and then that's it. And then nothing happens after that. So you're like, you're stuck at a super horny phase and no resolution. And that's where the movie kind of ends.
In terms of like his filmography, how I feel like where this is placed in my personal rankings, it's good. It's not my favorite. I think I'll always prefer his indie stuff. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. I feel like if you're a good director, you can kind of bounce between indie, mid, big, and it'll still translate. And I'm seeing that Luca is a person who can do that, which is exciting, because I feel like we need big budget movies that aren't, or mid budget movies that aren't IP films, that still have creative integrity. So I'm happy that this exists just in the film landscape, that we can have some more variety.
The vibe I get from the movie is a really is an Oscar baity type of movie. You know what I'm saying? There are certain elements in it that go, oh yes, that's one of the best movies of the year, kind of thing. You know?
I don't know about Oscar. I won't put that out there. I think that this is a good movie, though. I feel like it's good. Will it stack up to what we'll get as Cannes and Venice and all of those film festivals start to roll out their selections? I don't know. The only movie I can firmly say will definitely be in that conversation is Dune.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the movies that have come out this year, I don't know about this one. We'll see if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I could be.
Yeah.
We'll see as the year trickles on. I think people have very short-term memories.
Yeah.
So right now, this is in the zeitgeist because, like you said, it is tennis season. The fashion grillers are getting their little tennis skirts out. Like it's a nice cultural refreshment in terms of like having a movie be impactful in what other people are doing and talking about. But in terms of like the industry and how the industry will see it,
Old challengers, Luca, Zendaya, amazing. Palette cleanser. And then y'all got the real show coming afterwards down the pipe. Did you like that clip? Well, you can listen to the entire podcast because the 16mm Film Crew podcast is available on all major podcast platforms.